Dwayne Johnson had long been hailed as a real-life superhero. Whether it was his legendary workouts, his on-screen charisma, or his larger-than-life personality, fans adored him. But beneath the muscles and movie sets, Dwayne carried something more precious: a heart fiercely loyal to people, especially to those who needed a hero off-screen. It was a rainy Tuesday morning in Atlanta. Production on his newest action film, Steel Horizon, was behind schedule. The crew was scrambling, the director was irritable, and Dwayne had been running on 4 hours of sleep. He was flipping through the day's schedule in his trailer when his assistant, Jenna, knocked twice and stepped in without waiting. "You need to see this," she said softly, handing him a worn, hand-decorated envelope. He raised an eyebrow and took it. On the front, written in wobbly, colorful letters, "To Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson from your biggest fan, Liam." He looked up. "Another fan letter?" Jenna hesitated. "Yes. But, it's different. I think you'll understand once you read it." Curious, Dwayne opened the envelope and unfolded the single page inside. Crayon drawings lined the margins: little stick figures of Dwayne fighting monsters, a big smiling sun, and a hospital bed. The handwriting was shaky. "Hi Mr. Dwayne Johnson, my name is Liam. I am 7 years old and I am sick with something very hard to say. My doctor says I don't have too much time. But I want to tell you that I love your movies because they make me feel strong and not scared. My dream is to meet you and maybe do a secret handshake with you. If that is too hard, it's okay. Thank you for making me smile, from your friend, Liam." Dwayne blinked hard, staring at the letter as the rain tapped gently on the trailer roof. He read it again. And again. "Where is he?" he asked Jenna, his voice lower, slower. "Children's Hospital of Atlanta. Room 402. Pediatric Oncology," she replied, already anticipating the question. Dwayne glanced at the production schedule on the wall: 12 hours of shooting ahead. He closed the folder. "Cancel the day," he said simply. "Tell the director I've got somewhere more important to be." 2 hours later, Dwayne stepped into the quiet hospital corridor wearing a plain hoodie, a baseball cap, and carrying a small duffel bag. No cameras. No entourage. Just him. Nurses gave him second glances but didn't stop him. When he reached room 402, he paused at the door. Through the small glass window, he saw a pale, skinny boy with a bandaged head and wide eyes glued to a TV playing Moana. Liam's smile brightened the moment he saw Maui on screen. Dwayne entered the room slowly. "Hey, Liam," he said gently. The boy's head turned, and his mouth dropped open. He blinked twice. "Are you really The Rock?" Dwayne knelt beside the bed. "Only when I do this," he said, raising one eyebrow with dramatic flair. Liam laughed, clutching his little fists in delight. They spent the entire afternoon together. Dwayne told jokes, did impersonations, even wrestled with a plush dinosaur in a pretend WWE match. They created a secret handshake that involved finger snaps, elbow bumps, and a mini dance that made the nurses giggle from the hallway. But the most magical moment came when Dwayne pulled out a custom action figure he had made just for Liam, not of Maui or any of his movie characters, but a miniature of Liam himself, in a superhero cape with the letters LH on the chest, Little Hero. Liam's hands trembled as he held it. "Is this me?" Dwayne nodded. "Yep. Because you're stronger than all of us." As the evening sun faded behind gray clouds, Liam dozed off, still holding the action figure against his chest. His breathing was soft, steady. Dwayne sat there quietly for a while, watching him. A nurse touched his arm. "He hasn't smiled like that in weeks," she whispered. "Thank you." Dwayne stood slowly, his face unreadable, but his eyes glistened. He stepped out of the room, gently closing the door behind him, unaware that one of the nurses had recorded the entire encounter, and that this simple act of kindness was about to touch millions around the world. The video was never meant to go public. Nurse Carla, who had recorded Dwayne's quiet visit to Liam's hospital room, initially intended to keep it as a private keepsake for the boy's family, something beautiful to remember him by. But when Liam's mother, a soft-spoken woman named Melissa, watched it later that night, she broke down in tears. Not from sorrow, but from something else, the rare, searing kind of gratitude that only appears in moments too pure for words. She uploaded the video with a caption that read simply, "Dwayne Johnson gave my son more than a dream. He gave him a reason to smile when we thought there were none left." Within hours, the video went viral. By sunrise, it was on every major media outlet's front page. Dwayne Johnson makes terminally ill boy's dream come true. The Rock is a real-life superhero. Watch this and try not to cry. On Instagram, the clip had surpassed 10 million views before noon. People didn't just watch, they shared, they wept, they commented by the thousands. "This is what a hero looks like. I was having a rough day until I saw this. Thank you, Dwayne. Liam, you're the bravest boy I've ever seen." But Dwayne, he didn't post about it. Not one word. No retweet. No comment, because to him, what happened in room 402 wasn't a moment to broadcast, it was a memory to protect. Back on the film set, the director was irritated. Dwayne had lost them an entire day of production, and the schedule was already slipping. But when the crews saw the video, many of them for the first time as it exploded across their phones, the mood shifted completely. Jenna approached Dwayne with a printout of a letter from the hospital, a thank you from the staff, signed by every nurse and doctor in the pediatric ward. "Still think you need to explain why you were gone?" she asked gently. Dwayne shook his head, holding the letter for a long moment. "They don't need to understand," he said. "Liam did. That's enough." 3 days later, Dwayne received another letter. But this one was different. It wasn't from a fan. It was from Liam's older sister, Chloe, a girl of about 15 with a poetic heart and a voice that carried quiet fire. "Dear Mr. Johnson, I don't know if you'll read this, but I wanted to tell you what you really gave Liam. You didn't just make him laugh or forget the pain for a little while. You made him feel seen. He kept your action figure by his pillow every night. He called it, Brave Me. He said if you believed he was a superhero, maybe he really was. When you left, he whispered, I think The Rock is my best friend now, thank you for giving him that, with love, Chloe." Dwayne folded the letter carefully and tucked it into his wallet. Later that evening, while sitting alone in his hotel room, he picked up his phone and finally broke his silence that he posted a simple photo, Liam's drawing of the superhero version of himself, Brave Me. The caption read, "He gave me strength. Rest well, little hero. You were always the strongest one in the room." Meanwhile, something else was unfolding. Inspired by Liam's story, fans began flooding the hospital with letters, toys, donations. Parents shared stories of their own children fighting similar battles. A charity campaign began circulating, called Be Brave Like Liam, raising funds for terminally ill children to have their wishes fulfilled, and through it all, Dwayne stayed quiet, helping behind the scenes, sending letters to kids, even arranging surprise visits through the foundation that had now taken Liam's name. But something was still unfinished. Something deeply personal. Liam's birthday was in 2 weeks. And Dwayne had promised to come back, even though Liam was gone. The day Liam should have turned 8 arrived with overcast skies and quiet streets. In another world, a better world, he would have been blowing out candles, his laughter echoing through hospital halls, maybe even tearing open superhero-themed gifts while nurses in party hats clapped and cheered, but instead, room 402 at the Children's Hospital of Atlanta sat empty. The hospital staff, many of whom had grown quietly attached to Liam, moved with slower steps that day. The bright balloons that used to hang in the pediatric wing had been replaced with a framed photo of Liam in his bed, holding the Brave Me action figure, a beaming smile lighting up his fragile face. Dwayne Johnson hadn't said a word publicly about his plans that morning. No social media posts. No entourage. No reporters tipped off, just one black SUV pulling up outside the hospital at 7:42 a.m., and a man in a navy hoodie stepping out, his shoulders hunched lower than usual. The moment he walked through the hospital doors, every nurse turned to look. Some of them smiled softly. Others wiped their eyes. Room 402, he asked the front desk. The nurse nodded. We left it unlocked. Just in case. Inside the room, nothing had changed. Liam's drawings still lined the walls: superheroes, monsters, rockets, and one stick figure with enormous muscles, smiling beside a smaller figure with spiky hair labeled Me. The hospital had preserved it like a little shrine. Dwayne stood there for a long while, just looking. Finally, he opened the duffel bag he'd carried in. Inside were decorations. Balloons. Streamers. A cake with the words, "Happy Birthday, Liam," in bold, blue frosting. And a brand new version of the Brave Me action figure, this time in a box with professional packaging, just like a real toy. It even had a comic book inside. Dwayne had paid to have it designed, manufactured, and boxed, not to sell, but to honor a promise that he set it carefully on the windowsill beside the old one. Then, without fanfare, he decorated the room. Alone. He hung the balloons, tied ribbons to the bed frame, placed the cake at the foot of the bed. He lit the candles himself. 9 of them, one for each year, and one for luck. And when everything was ready, he sat down beside the empty bed and whispered, "Happy birthday, kiddo." He stayed there in silence for several minutes, until the candles had burned halfway down. Then, slowly, he blew them out. In the hallway, Chloe stood watching. She hadn't told Dwayne she would be there. She hadn't meant to come at all. But something had pulled her back to the hospital that morning. Maybe it was grief. Maybe it was guilt. Maybe it was love. When she saw Dwayne step out of the room, she was startled by how tired he looked. Not physically, he was still built like a boulder, but spiritually, as if the weight of the day had finally pressed too hard on his ribs. They looked at each other for a moment. "I didn't know you'd come," she said softly. "I had to," he replied. "He asked me to." Chloe reached into her backpack and pulled out a folder. "I brought something too. I wanted to give it to you in person." Inside were pages of drawings. Liam's drawings. But not just his usual superheroes. These were scenes Dwayne had never seen, him and Liam on wild adventures, flying over volcanoes, defeating dragons, sharing pizza in space. Every page was colored with effort, tiny hands doing their best to make the worlds real. Dwayne took the folder in silence, turning page after page. Finally, he reached one where Liam had drawn a giant heart, and inside it, written in crooked letters, "Mr. Johnson is my family." His throat tightened. He nodded, fighting to keep his composure. "Can I keep these?" he asked. Chloe smiled through misty eyes. "He made them for you." Everyone. Later that afternoon, as Dwayne stepped back into his SUV, he was quiet for a long time. Jenna, his assistant, waited patiently before breaking the silence. "You okay?" she finally asked. "No," he said quietly. "But I think I'm where I'm supposed to be." He opened his phone, scrolling through Liam's drawings again. Then, for the first time since that quiet hospital birthday, he made another post. This time, it was a video.no music. No filters. Just a close-up of the "Brave Me" figure sitting on the hospital windowsill, with the words ****, some heroes wear capes, some fight monsters, and some just believe even when the world tells them not to. Happy birthday, little hero. After the quiet birthday at the hospital, something in Dwayne Johnson shifted. It was subtle at first, a kind of gravity in his presence, a deeper pause in his interviews, longer silences before he answered certain questions. But those closest to him felt it like a tide pulling at the shore. He wasn't grieving publicly. No speeches. No red carpet tributes. Just a man carrying the echo of a boy who believed in him more than anyone else ever had. The world had moved on. The viral video of Liam's hospital visit had faded from headlines. Other stories had taken over, louder stories, newer faces, but Dwayne hadn't forgotten that he had work to do, something he didn't fully understand yet, but something that called to him louder than Hollywood ever had. 3 weeks later, Dwayne was in a modest boardroom, not a studio lot. No velvet chairs. No craft services. Just folding chairs, legal pads, and people who weren't dazzled by celebrity, but hardened by reality: pediatric doctors, child psychologists, non-profit organizers, and 2 mothers who had lost their children the year before. At the front of the room, Dwayne stood quietly, holding the "Brave Me" figure in his hands. "This was Liam," he began, his voice calm but firm. "And there are thousands like him. Kids fighting invisible wars with more courage than I've ever seen on a movie set. Kids who don't need another blockbuster, they need a moment. Just one moment to feel like the heroes they really are." He paused. "I don't want to build something about them. I want to build something for them." He named it the Brave Me Foundation, a nonprofit dedicated to fulfilling the dreams of terminally ill children by connecting them directly with the heroes they admired. Not just celebrities, but local heroes too: firefighters, athletes, soldiers, astronauts, nurses. Real people. Real moments. No media circus. No brand partnerships. Just magic. Quiet, personal, life-changing magic. The room, full of professionals who'd seen hundreds of good intentions fizzle out, listened. But they didn't just nod out of politeness. They leaned in, because this wasn't a vanity project. It was a promise. Behind the scenes, Dwayne went all in. He used his own money, millions, to set up the infrastructure. Hired real counselors to vet each request. Created regional teams to manage visits personally, ensuring that no child's final wish got lost in bureaucracy. He even started training sessions for celebrities who wanted to be involved, not how to pose for photos, but how to be fully present, how to listen, how to show up. One of the first requests came from a 10-year-old girl in Arizona named Alani, who had always dreamed of meeting a real astronaut. Dwayne flew her to Houston, walked her through NASA himself, and arranged a private video call with a woman orbiting Earth aboard the International Space Station. When the call ended, Alani looked up at him and whispered, "I think you might be an astronaut too. You always help people launch." Dwayne laughed and wiped a tear. "Well, in that case, Commander Rock reporting for duty." Alani passed away 2 weeks later, but her parents told the press, she died with a fire in her heart and stars in her eyes. She believed the universe heard her. And that was the beginning. Soon, stories started surfacing. A boy in Ohio got to suit up with his local firefighters. A teenage musician in Seattle played a duet with a famous violinist over Zoom. A shy girl in Nebraska got a visit from her favorite Olympic gymnast, who did cartwheels in her backyard, and every time, somewhere in the background, Dwayne was involved, whether personally, financially, or silently guiding the mission from afar. But not everyone saw it that way. There were critics, of course. Voices that said it was just another PR stunt. That he was polishing his image for another potential political run. That it was a distraction from real, systemic issues. Dwayne never responded to them. Not once. Instead, he sat quietly in hospital rooms, took late-night calls from grieving parents, and answered handwritten letters with personal voice notes, even when his eyes were red and tired, because it wasn't about him. It was about Liam. And then came the letter that nearly stopped everything. It arrived at the foundation's office with no return address. Inside was a simple sheet of paper and a photo. The photo showed Dwayne sitting beside Liam in the hospital, the boy clutching the action figure. But the letter wasn't from a fan or a parent. It was from Liam's biological father. He had never been in the picture. Had left when Liam was a toddler. The world had seen only the heartwarming version, the brave little boy and his loving mother. But this letter told a different story, of regret, of a man haunted by absence, by choices he couldn't take back. He wrote, "I watched your video with my son more times than I can count. Not because I was proud, but because I hated myself for not being the one in that room, but you gave him more in a day than I gave in a lifetime, and I thank you. I don't deserve forgiveness. But I needed you to know you changed 2 lives that day. Not one." Dwayne sat with the letter in his hand, unsure what to do with the emotion that bubbled up. It was complicated. Ugly. Beautiful, real. He folded it, tucked it next to Chloe's old drawings, and later that night, whispered into the quiet of his room, "I didn't just do it for Liam. I did it for every kid who's ever felt forgotten. And for every parent who wishes they could go back. Because this mission born from grief, fueled by memory, was no longer a tribute. It was a movement. In the months that followed, the Brave Me Foundation blossomed beyond what anyone expected. What began as a tribute to one boy's final wish was now a network stretching across the country, fulfilling more than just dreams. It was building legacies. For the children, for their families, and in a quiet, humbling way for Dwayne himself. Yet despite its growing success, Dwayne still walked the path with a quiet ache in his chest, every time he saw a child grip one of the Foundation's custom superhero figures modeled after themselves. Just like Liam's, a flicker of memory returned. Not sadness, exactly. Not joy either. Something in between. Something sacred. He was filming a new project in Vancouver when the call came. It was from Jenna, his longtime assistant, but this time her voice held a tremor he hadn't heard in years. "You need to come back to Atlanta," she said. "There's someone asking for you." Dwayne pressed the phone closer. "Is it a kid?" There was a long pause. "No. It's Chloe." He flew back the next day without hesitation. By now, he had learned to brace for difficult conversations. He'd sat with parents days after their children passed. Held hands with mothers who had nothing left but a shoebox of memories. He'd carried grief on his shoulders the way he used to carry weight, steady, heavy, necessary, but this was different. This was Chloe. She met him at a quiet cafe outside the city, her once light eyes shaded by something older now. The teenage girl who'd sent him drawings of her brother had grown taller, but her voice was still soft, her presence still filled with that quiet fire. They didn't speak right away. Dwayne waited until she was ready. "I'm going to college next fall," she finally said, stirring her coffee absent-mindedly. "Pre-law. Liam always said I'd make a good lawyer because I argued with cartoons on TV." Dwayne chuckled. He wasn't wrong. Chloe smiled faintly, then reached into her bag and pulled out a thick folder. "I want to help your foundation. Not just visits. The real work. The stuff that gets buried. Medical policy. Access to palliative care. Legal protections for terminally ill children and their families." Dwayne raised an eyebrow. "That's heavy work." "So was losing my brother," she said without flinching. "But I want to make sure his name means something, not just for smiles and moments. For real change." He leaned back, absorbing her words. She wasn't asking for permission. She was telling him she belonged in this mission now. "What do you need from me?" he asked. She looked him in the eyes. "A seat at the table. Not as Liam's sister. As me." By the end of the week, Chloe was officially brought on as the Foundation's youngest board advisor. She was determined, driven, and to Dwayne's quiet pride completely unafraid to challenge him. Their first major project together was establishing Brave Rights, a program that provided free legal support to families navigating terminal diagnoses, insurance denials, and hospital bureaucracy. It wasn't glamorous. It didn't go viral, but it saved lives, and soon, another call came, this time, from the governor's office in Georgia. The Brave Me Foundation had been nominated for a humanitarian grant, one that would double their operational funding for the next 3 years. Dwayne wasn't interested in politics, but this was different. This wasn't for a campaign. This was for kids who deserved more time, more dignity, more hope. The ceremony was planned for late October in a downtown civic auditorium. Dwayne almost declined the invitation to attend. He didn't need the spotlight, he hated it in these moments. But Chloe insisted. "You don't get to sit this one out," she said. "You showed up when no one else did. They should see the man who started all of this." The night of the event, the auditorium was packed with city officials, healthcare advocates, and nonprofit leaders. Dwayne, dressed in a quiet charcoal suit, stood off stage as Chloe delivered the acceptance speech. She spoke not as a grieving sister, but as a visionary about systemic gaps in care, about every child the system forgets. But at the very end, she pulled a crumpled piece of paper from her pocket and said, "This is the last thing my brother Liam ever wrote." It was tucked under his pillow the night he passed. She unfolded it carefully, and read, "If I go away, I want Mr. Johnson to keep being a hero for the kids who are scared like me. I think he can do it. I think he already is." Brave Meth Room fell into a hush. Not a single breath stirred for several seconds. Dwayne closed his eyes. When Chloe stepped off the stage, she handed him the paper. "You were right," she said. "He saw something in you." Dwayne looked down at the boy's writing, shaky, brave, believing, and felt something break open inside his chest. It wasn't grief, it was legacy. That night, he made a rare public statement, standing at a podium before cameras and officials. He spoke plainly, his voice steady and grounded. "I've been called many things in my life: wrestler, actor, celebrity. But the greatest honor I've ever had is to be Liam's friend. And now, to be the keeper of his dream." Then he paused, emotion thickening his voice. "We couldn't save Liam. But we can make sure every other child like him has something no disease can take: dignity, joy, and the belief that they matter." The audience stood, not for the celebrity, but for the boy who believed a man could be a hero and the man who believed right back. 3 years had passed since Liam's letter first landed in Dwayne Johnson's hands. 3 quiet, powerful years. The world had changed. So had Dwayne. Not in the way the headlines tracked, not in box office records or social media milestones. But in a subtler, deeper way. There was more silence in his days now. More intention behind every yes. Less need to be seen, more hunger to see. By now, the Brave Me Foundation had grown into a nationwide movement. They had opened centers in 7 cities. They partnered with major hospitals. Their Brave Rights program had lobbied for and passed legislation in 3 states, ensuring that children with terminal illnesses would have guaranteed access to palliative care, mental health support, and wish fulfillment programs, but none of it felt like a conclusion. It felt like a beginning, and that's why Dwayne stood quietly one morning outside a modest brick building in Atlanta, a building that, as of that day, would carry a new name, the Liam Carter Brave Me Children's Center. The ceremony was small. No red carpet. No spotlights. Just Liam's mother Melissa, Chloe, a handful of foundation team members, and families whose children had passed through the foundation's arms in the years since. Chloe, now a sophomore in college and already working on her first policy paper, stood beside Dwayne as the curtain was pulled away, revealing the engraved plaque on the wall. This center is dedicated to the brave hearts of children who see beyond their pain and to the heroes who choose to walk with them even for just a day. Inspired by Liam Carter. Loved forever. Melissa held Dwayne's hand tightly as they both looked at the plaque. Neither of them said anything. They didn't need to. After the event, Dwayne lingered in the garden behind the center, a space designed for children who needed fresh air, gentle light, and peace. It had been Chloe's idea. There were superhero wind chimes and benches carved with words like hope, fearless, and loved. Dwayne sat alone for a while. He didn't have a speech. He didn't need one. Eventually, Chloe joined him, holding something wrapped in brown paper. It's from me, she said quietly. I finished it last month. He opened it carefully. Inside was a framed comic book cover, hand-drawn by Chloe. On it, Liam stood in the center, smiling in a cape, Brave Me, printed across his chest. Behind him stood Dwayne, not as The Rock, not as a wrestler or actor, but as a man in a hoodie and jeans, hand on the boy's shoulder. Around them were other children, each with a unique superhero design, all drawn from real kids. The foundation had helped. At the bottom, in bold comic lettering, every hero starts with a heart. Dwayne stared at it, not speaking. His jaw clenched. His eyes stung. I didn't know how to thank you, Chloe said. So I thought maybe this could be a reminder that the story never really ended. Dwayne finally spoke, his voice low. It didn't. Because heroes like Liam never disappear. They just hand off the torch. In the months that followed, the Brave Me Foundation quietly launched a new initiative, Hero for a Day. The idea was simple: to let every child who came through their program experience being the hero in their own story. They trained staff to write scripts, designed costumes, created missions, with the child as the center of a custom-built adventure, whether that meant saving the world from an alien attack or solving a mystery as a superhero detective. They didn't call them terminal patients, they called them heroes. And every mission ended the same way, with a medal, a hug, and a promise: you are the strongest one in the room. One evening, long after another Hero for a Day celebration had ended, Dwayne sat alone in his home office. The Brave Me figure still sat on his desk. Beside it, a shadow box held Liam's original letter, Chloe's drawings, and that final note Liam had written before passing that he picked it up, reading it one more time: "If I go away, I want Mr. Johnson to keep being a hero for the kids who are scared like me. I think he can do it. I think he already is." Dwayne leaned back in his chair, staring at the words, and then, with quiet resolve, he reached for a pen and began writing a new letter, not for press, not for publication, but for the next child who would walk through the Brave Me Center doors, afraid and unsure. It began like this: "Hey, hero. I know things are tough right now. But I want you to remember something: you're not alone. And you're stronger than you think, because sometimes, the greatest hero isn't the one who saves the world, it's the one who refuses to stop showing up again, and again, and again for the ones who need saving most."